Hello, this is Bob Gray Sr. Welcome to Ministry Moments. Every Friday, Lord willing, at 3 o'clock Central Time, we'll come and meet with you. And it's not an elongated thing. It's just a few moments of spending time letting you know the things, the questions that come up and preachers ask and Christians ask. And I try to do my best to try to answer the emails and the text messages and all of that. But sometimes it works out better if I can just go ahead and meet with you like this. So Ministry Moments every Friday, 3 o'clock on Facebook Live now, and as well as YouTube. And soon we'll have our own podcast. So I hope that you'll join us each week. You don't have to be a pastor, don't have to be a preacher. This is for anybody in the ministry. And so let me talk to you about what I call the Joseph principle out of the Word of God. I refer you to Genesis chapter 41 and verses 25 through 30, where Pharaoh dreamed a dream of 7 fat kine, and then he dreamed about then there were 7 lean, famished kine. And the 7 lean ones ate up the 7 fat ones. And then he dreamed another dream, that of corn, 7 stalks of corn that were full and ripe. And then after that was 7 stalks of lean and corn. And the 7 lean ate up the 7 full blown corn stalk. Now, this these dreams that he had, Joseph gave him the answer to those dreams. Pharaoh's own magicians couldn't. But then Joseph made it very plain, this is from God. God give this to me, I need to give to you. And he told him that the 7 lean kine, K-I-N-E, would eat up the 7 full and the 7 fat kind would eat them up, and said the same thing about the stalk of corn. The lean stalk of corn, 7 would eat up the other 7. And he was telling Pharaoh that you're going to have 7 years of feast and 7 years of famine. Now, I think that that's pretty much a picture of the history of man. 7 years of feast and 7 years of famine. And so in this Joseph principle, I think that there's some things that we can learn, especially with what we're facing now with this COVID-19 and churches being shut down, and never expect it to be like this. Although, in all honesty, the stats are not, for some reason, they don't gel out. And I worry about these models that they're using on this COVID-19. We have more people dying from the flu than we have from this, and of course they're saying it's going to be 200,000 up to more than that, which is all pure projection. But I'm for scrubbing everything down. I'm for keeping hands clean, and I'm for that social distancing, especially with certain people that I know. I'm kidding. So let me give you some thoughts here on the Joseph principle, something you ought to practice in your life and in your ministry. 1, 7 years of feast. 2, 7 years of famine. The famine always follows the feast. God supplies the needs that you have. God supplied them, but you consume it upon your own lust, James said. So always remember that God does supply, especially if you're his children, he's going to supply. So there's going to be that 7 years of feast. Now, don't be foolish. When you have those good days and you have those prosperous days and things are going well, the church budget's being met and everything's going fine, don't think that it's going to last that way for forever and ever. There are bull markets and there are bear markets in the stock market. It's going to happen. Once we get past this, it's going to happen again. The wisdom in this Joseph principle is to make sure you take advantage of the feast. For example, let me give you an example. We never spent more than, when people said we'll give so much to missions, we took 80% and said that's what we'll commit ourselves to. because we know it'd be up and down and so on. Now, if we ended up with a surplus, then that was one way of giving Christmas gifts to missionaries and planning for the next missions conference for the next year. So our operating budget at church, we never lived on 100%, never. 80%, always wise live on 80%. Why? You're going to have unforeseen things happen, like what has happened in our nation right now. You're feeling the effects of it in your home. You're feeling the effects of it at church. If you're pastoring, then you're concerned about keeping the doors open, the lights on, and so on to get back to normal. Now, I'm just saying 7 years of feast, 7 years of famine. My third point is that the feast comes first. The feast comes first. I'm talking about the Joseph principle in the Bible. 7 years of feast, 7 years of famine. My third point is that the feast comes first. So number 4, be wise when there are feast days. Be wise. Don't spend all that you've got coming in. Don't do that, because you're going to have those 7 years of famine. They're going to come. So you need to prepare for it while God is giving those blessings of those feast years. You know what I'm talking about. If you've been in the ministry at all for a decade or so, you know how it feast and then famine and feast and then famine. December 25th rolls around, it's on a Sunday, and you pray to God that nobody from your Bible college comes visit, because everybody's gone somewhere else. I don't know where they're going, but they don't go to church elsewhere because everybody's down. But my point being, you're going to have 7 years of feast. You're going to have 7 years of famine. The feast will come first. Number 4, you need to take advantage of that feast and don't spend all that comes in. Don't do that. You be a miser. You put some things away. It's biblical. It's scriptural. Now, Joseph prepared for the famine. The one who was in charge was the one who prepared for the famine. So, pastor, prepare for the famine. Dad at home, prepare for the famine. Hey, business owner, prepare for the famine. There's going to be an interruption sooner or later in your cash flow. There's going to be an interruption because of now it's worldwide, and I think forgive me for saying you're not going to like this, but I think we overreact sometimes. All right. Next, this will happen to every nation as well as a church. It'll happen to every nation. 7 years of feast, 7 years of famine. It's going to happen. And the leader who's wise will prepare for those feast days. It will happen in a family. Those bear markets and bull markets are going to happen. It's going to happen. And when it goes up, you be very wise in how you handle it when you have it. And you put something away, because the lean days are going to come. Next, those who save during the feast will survive the famine. Those who save during the feast will survive the famine. If you save during the feast times and prepare, then you'll survive the famine. But it's coming. One way or the other, it's coming. People used to laugh at Brother Hiles. He talked about what is happening now, the pandemic, and everything's happening in America now. I can still hear Brother Hiles thundering about it, that there'll be riots and over food and so on. Now, I'm just saying to you, please understand, you've got feast days. When you have those, and I'm not scolding you if you've not done this, I'm saying we're going to get back on our feet and get back going again. I'm saying you make sure you don't, if somebody at the church says, we'll give $1,000 a week to missions, don't commit to $1,000. Commit to 75%. Your income, have a workable, livable budget of 80% of your income, and prepare yourself, because you're going to have those lean days. Mrs. Ayers was my financial aide for over 3 decades. She could squirrel more stuff away, and then Carter's got liver pills. And I thank God for it, because we had the best credit rating in town, because she was very wise, and we worked together as a team to make sure that it was taken care of. Now, let me give you a thought of something here. We need to operate by percentage. Let me explain to you what I mean. The tithe is 10%. So when you tithe, it's 10%. Now, that's what the word tithe means. It means 10%. Now, God deals in percentages. I'll go through and read where he'll say a fourth, and then he'll say a fifth, and then he'll say 1/6. What is that? Those are fractions, yes, I know, but they're percentages. And God deals with percentages. Now, let me show you how this will help you. If you give a tithe plus 1% for debt retirement and 1% for bus ministry and 1% for whatever, that percentage never goes down unless you decide to back up to zero. But if you say, I'm going to tithe, that's 10%, and plus give $20 to the bus ministry, $20 to debt retirement, and $20 to whatever, missions, your income gets cut back. So what do? You go to the pastor and say, Pastor, please don't think I'm backslid. I'm not backslid. I just don't have the overtime. And I can't give that $20 to missions. I can't give that $20 to the bus ministry or debt retirement. Now, if it were a percentage basis, then you won't have to worry. 10% of $1,000 is the same as 10% of $100. So if you operate on your tithes and offerings on a percentage basis. Now, when you do that and rough times come, guess what? You're still giving the same 1% for missions, let's say. You're still getting the same 1%. Now, there's a thin line between faith and foolishness. And so when you decide that you're going to do it by a percentage basis, then let's say that they cut your hours back. Well, guess what? You're still giving 1%. 1% is 1%. 10% is still 10%. I love how God makes it equal for everybody. I love it. I love it. If you make $100, give $10 as a tithe plus 1% here, 1% there. You're giving just as much as the guy's making $1,000 a week. And God's going to bless you for it. For example, Leviticus 16 says clearly, if you're late on a tithe, you are to add a fifth if you're late. What's that? 20%. No, that's not whiskey. A fifth is 20%. So you need to add 20%. If you didn't pay your tithes last week and you say, oh man, how did I forget that? Okay, then you put it in the next week, but add a fifth to it. Add a fifth to it. Sometimes they get mad at Christian school. Oh, late charges. We're supposed to be a Christian school. You shouldn't charge late charges. God charges late charges if you're late on your tithe. Now, let me give you, I want you to go to BereanPublications.com and you'll find Brother Howe's book on finances. And I want you to purchase that book. It is a small, let's see, how many pages is this thing? 131 pages. But these are Bible principles on finances. It covers everything. This is a series he taught on Wednesday night. It's in a book entitled Dr. Jack Hyles on Finances. Go to BereanPublications.com and order it. I would suggest, if you're a pastor, that maybe you teach these principles to your people on Wednesday night. You need to prepare your deacon leadership and others in leadership that have, as your ministry grows, you'll have department heads and different ministers and so on. You better learn how to live on less than what you have coming in. And what a time for us. I understand it's too late now. I've counseled at least 8 pastors this week. God bless them. And when I asked them, have you been living on your total income? They said, yes, I have. And I explained to them how they could should be careful next time around. It's too late now. Nothing can be done now. But if you'll learn to, don't commit all of what the people say they'll give to mission. They're not going to do it. Things are going to happen. They're going up and down. But if you say 75%, then you can, say it all comes in, that's even better. Send Christmas gifts to the missionaries. Use it for the next missions conference. Help pay for your speakers that come in. Same thing with your church budget. You should have a surplus account and an operating account. Everything ought to go in the surplus account. Then whatever the budget is that's voted on by the church, then you write a check from the surplus account to the operating account. You got it? But I would make a point to whatever, if let's say that you got a $2,000 a week budget account. I'm telling you, I plan on living on 80% of it. And I'd salt the other way because it's going to happen. listen, I don't know how many times we've been sued in all these years, but when push came to shove one time, I had $200,000 sitting in reserve, and it saved our hide. Yes, it did. And because we were wise enough to not live on everything from a lawsuit, but we survived because of it. And it'll work. And this is what I call the Joseph principle. And so I hope that this makes sense to you. Ministry Moments every Friday, 3 o'clock Central Time, Facebook Live, 3 o'clock every Friday. And I hope that you'll join us each week. You don't have to be a pastor to enjoy this. There are a lot of practical, just from this today, be very practical for a dad or a husband or if somebody has a business and so on. I think it'd be a blessing to you. Joseph principle, a thought I think that may be of great benefit to you. Too late now. We're in this mire. It's just too late now. But when we get out of this thing and get back on our feet, and we will get back on our feet again, God is going to bless his people. God is going to bless his people. We're in Egypt, that's true, but we're in the land of Goshen. Check it out. God's people in Genesis, they were cared for. God took care of them in the land of Goshen. Don't leave Goshen now. Don't quit tithing now. It's not time to quit tithing. It's not time to quit soul winning. It's not time to turn your back on the work of God. It's not the time at all. Joseph principle, hope it made sense to you. Hope it was a help. Join us every Friday now at 3 o'clock Central Time on YouTube, this YouTube channel, and then also on Facebook Live. God bless you. Have a great weekend. Social distance, but you can still lead people to Christ. Go out and go for a walk. See how many you can lead to Christ. Just you meet some people you've never even met before. God bless you. See you next week.